Alright everybody, welcome back to NYDIY Mechanical Garage. We're still working on a 2008 Daewoo, excuse me, my god, Daewoo stuck in my head, Suzuki Reno. We're doing front brakes on it. Customer drives a little bit hard on this thing because it is a commuter car. And this is the second set of brakes I put on this within, god, a year. Just drives a little bit too hard, and he does put cheap brakes on it, but at the end of the day, it does work. It is a commuter car. All it does is highway miles. So this thing's, on the average 70, 75 miles an hour possibly, and brakes hard. And next thing you know, 6 months later, the rotors warp. So you know as well as I do, highway miles don't put as much wear and tear on brakes as city miles do. So I came up with this crazy idea about putting cross-stroke rotors because one, they were super cheap on eBay. The second thing is that cross-stroke rotors do actually dissipate heat. Now, will they warp faster? Possibly, because you're actually removing material away from the rotor because you're drilling the holes in it. But we'll give it a shot. He needs brakes anyway. They're cheap, so why not give it a shot? So what we're going to do first is take these 12 millimeter bolts off the caliper, the sliding pins, okay, because the caliper goes this way. When it clamps, the caliper slides, and the pins slide in and out to make up for the space or make up for the clamping force. So we're going to remove these 12 millimeter bolts right here. Then we're going to remove the caliper bracket because we need to take the rotor off. So these are 19 millimeter, okay? Very common. They're anywhere between 17 to 21 millimeter, the caliper bracket bolts, and the caliper bolts itself on the sliding pins are anywhere between 12 and 15 millimeter actually. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these bolts off, take the caliper off, and we're going to compress the piston in there, okay? So hold on 1 second. Just about ready to take the caliper off. Use my little electric 3/8 gun right there. Alright, no big deal. We're going to put a little manual force in there. It's no big deal. Oh. Sometimes things like this put up a fight, but it's no big deal. There we go. Now, doing these brakes works with a majority of cars. A majority of cars are set up this way, having caliper slide pin bolts going into a pin, which the pin then hence rests in a caliper bracket. So we're taking the caliper off. Slide pins are in good shape. Now we're going to take off the 19 millimeter bolts. Pads don't look that bad. Just the rotors are really warped. So these are 19s. So what we're going to do is break them loose with a 19 millimeter socket and ratchet. That's that. We'll prop this up here because I don't want the hose. I don't want the caliper, resting on the hose because it stretches the hose. You can actually cause internal damage that way. Okay. Get my impact gun so I'm not here all day. One. Two. Okay, let's check the slide pins here. We'll just put a little extra lube on there just in case. We'll clean up these pad slides, grease them up so they're nicey. And this rotor should come off, but it's a little on there, so we're going to have to break out the big guns. There we go, rest them right there. Perfect. Okay, normally it should come off, but now normally rotors either pop right off or this set screw has been broken before because it's seized into the hub and have snapped. So normally on various designs you have front rotors that actually have threaded holes in there that you can put a bolt in there, turn the screws on a little bit, it pushes on the hub and it actually separates the rotor from the hub. In this case, the rotor's on there pretty good, but we give it a little bit of love, and that love is... Oh, it's not here. Where did it go? Uh-oh. Where's my big hammer? Uh-oh. Big hammer's gone, folks. All right, so I found my big hammer. Should have had it ready for you folks, and I'm very sorry for that. We're going to give it a couple taps of love, but before that, we're going to put these lug nuts on because sometimes, you know, we think we're accurate with a hammer when we're swinging it, and sometimes we're not that accurate, and you whack a lug stud and you mess up the threads, and then what? You're like, fuck, and you can't get studs. So give it a little bit of love. Starting to separate, and that's that. Now you can also whack on the inside of the rotor, depending on how rusted they are, like the old Ford Explorers or the Expeditions. They used, and even F-150s, the rotor hub used to rust to the actual hub bearing itself. You would beat these rotors this way, and the actual rotor ring would crack, and the rotor hub would actually still be stuck to the to the bearing hub. It's crazy, but as you can see, it came off. Little taps, little love. It came right off. You can use a penetrating oil as well to get in there, but in this case, it just came right off. So we'll throw this rotor to the side. Now, right here where the hub is, what you should do is always make sure this is cleaned up. See how beat up this is and rusty it is? We'll clean this up with a wire wheel. You could use a die grinder with a scuff pad, but you got to be careful you don't mess anything up. But we'll clean this up around the hub here. We'll clean up around the face, the bearing hub, and the hub and bearing, and then we're going to put the rotor on. Okay, we're back. So right now I have the caliper bracket off. Now we're going to service the caliper bracket. Now this step is actually overlooked in a lot of ways because you have the caliper sliding pins, and not a lot of people know that sometimes that when you have uneven wear in brake pads, a lot of it comes down to either a seized caliper piston that cannot slide in and out, and if it does slide, it may slide out but never actually relieve the pressure because the piston's either corroded inside the cylinder or it's kind of cockeyed and it never releases the pressure. So that means the brakes are always kind of on, but the driver may not feel a pull, whatever have you. Or it comes down to the pins. Now, a lot of times on high mileage cars or older cars, these rubber boots, they rip, water, salt, and a bunch of shit gets in there over time and ruins the grease inside it, and they actually seize. I actually had sometimes buy new boots because I had to heat up the caliper bracket so much to get the pin out, or actually machine and drill the pin, or just buy a whole new caliper bracket and caliper assembly because it's cheaper and faster that way. In this case, everything is still moving, but since we have it off the car, we're going to do a quick service on it. What is a quick service? I could be blowing this way out of proportion, but I learned how to do brakes from senior guys. They taught me, and now I'm going to pass this knowledge on to everybody else. Take the extra step because the car won't come back, or less chances of coming back in regards to a brake issue. So we have brake dust, grease, and all this other crap there. So what we're going to do is just get either a plastic or a metal wire brush, preferably nylon if it's if they're not heavily corroded or nasty, and just kind of just brush all the old brake dust and grease off. Same thing with this. See all the crap coming off of it? Try not to breathe it in. If you want to wear a mask because you shouldn't be breathing this crap in anyway. So blow it off. Look at that. Now nice and clean. So when you apply your grease, it's a nice clean surface. We're not done yet though. Now we're going to take the pins out, peel these rubber boots back. See the rust? See the rust that gets in there? When a rubber boot is ripped or torn, that rust is actually in the actual hole itself where the pin slides in and out. But we're going to peel back this boot, take a look at the grease. See how black that grease is? That's nasty. That's just from wear and tear. So what we're going to do is clean this off. Put a little grease in there like so. Brand new grease. I know there's old grease in there, but it's okay. Turn it as it goes in. Push in. The rubber boot seat's on there. Now you got fresh grease. Now just repeat it on the top part. Clean it all off. Give it a little bit of love. goes in. Nicey, nicey. Now, caliper bracket has been serviced. Okay? So now, pads. Sometimes when you buy pads aftermarket, even sometimes from the manufacturer, but less likely from the manufacturer, more aftermarket, especially if you buy cheap quality AutoZone brake pads or Advanced Auto Parts pads or eBay pads. Sometimes when they actually make the punch for the backing of the brake pad that the material is actually adhered to, the stamp or die it gets worn out after making thousands and hundreds of thousands of punches to make the backing plate of the actual pad itself. Sometimes where the pad sits into the grooves, okay, the backing plate is all messed up. So sometimes you have to actually size your pads, which sometimes involves filing the edges here to make a nice, smooth application when the brakes are in there. So in this case, our pads, these pads actually slide in there pretty good. Actually, no, this one doesn't. So this is what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to, actually, no, this one fits pretty good. You want an actual nice slide, nice brake application or nice pad application, because you want the pads to slide in their slides where they sit. So this inboard pad fits pretty good, because the inboard pad, a majority of the time, these noise makers or these tabs that rub against the rotor when the brake pad wears a certain way, this normally goes on the inside. This is normally the inboard pad. So let's check the outboard pad as well. See if we have proper fitment in the actual pad locations. Look, the pad's going in and out. Look at that. Perfect. So we don't have to do any grinding or filing to make it fit in the actual pad seats themselves. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab some grease here, put it down. Now here's a big thing that people always comment about, not on my channel because I don't have enough followers just yet, but I always get different stories of, just use Never-Seez. Never-Seez is a lubricant, I will say that, but I don't necessarily agree with it. I've had some negative things or negative outcomes with using Never-Seez as a lubricant for brake pads. I prefer grease. I never had a problem with them using grease at all. It's water repellent, along with I think the lubricity is a little bit higher than Never-Seez. Never-Seez is great for using it on parts they're not supposed to seize up, hence Never-Seez. So I use grease instead of Never-Seez. It's always of like, who says tomato, I say tomato, that kind of ordeal. So now we got our caliper bracket service. Our pads will sit in the pad mounting areas nicely, nice in and out sliding application. So now we're going to get the rotors. Now, you're going to make fun of me. Really? You're going to put cross-drill rotors on a 2008 Suzuki Reno? Yeah, I am. One, because they're cheap. Two, maybe it'll fix the braking issue. Because, again, I put brakes on a car that's mainly driven on the highway, 45, 50 minutes on the highway, using not a lot of brake applications like a city, but the brakes are used because guys cooking, guys moving. So why not? They were cheaper than regular blank rotors, so why not try these out for ha-has? So we're going to put the rotor on. Now here's also another thing too. I actually had to put a die grinder pad because it was a little rough, but I just did it quickly just to get rid of the bulky stuff, and then I used a wire brusher on the hub itself. So I'm going to put the rotor on. You can put grease there or Never-Seez, doesn't really matter. I mean, I'll put a little grease on there just to make everyone happy, just so the rotor doesn't seize to the hub. You can use Never-Seez here, or you can use grease, one or the other. Doesn't really matter. This grease is mainly used for brakes anyway, so really the grease doesn't go in any type of machined areas that need a high area of cleanliness. So, but yeah, we're going to put the rotor on. We're going to put the bracket on. I'm a big firm of using Loctite on brake components. You can use either blue or red. If I take apart stuff and the manufacturer uses a red Loctite, I'll replace it with a red Loctite. If it uses a blue Loctite, I'll use a blue Loctite. But I highly recommend using Loctite because with brake applications, obviously you don't want the shit coming loose. So, but here we go. We're going to put the caliper bracket back on. Make sure you thread it in nicey because you don't want to cross thread these threads. This thread's a little beat up. There we go. the top bolt. Here's the bottom bolt. Okay. Get our electric impact gun here. Send it home. You can torque these down or just send them. I'll follow up and tighten them up by hand. Now again, a majority, this brake job is a majority of all cars, all brakes. Okay, that's tight. Now we're going to put our pads. Now, brake pads. Two ways of doing it. You can use a spray disc brake quiet or the liquid stuff. What this is the spray is mostly like a gasket sealer type of thing. Same exact, I think it's almost the same thing. It pretty much makes a sticky surface so the pad sticks to the caliper and it sticks to the caliper piston. Because a squeak, what is a squeak? A squeak is a high frequency vibration. So this prevents the pads from moving around, creating a high frequency vibration, also known as a squeak. So we're going to put a little bit of this on. Not much, just a little bit. You don't need a lot. Spread it around with your finger. I like to spray, but when I bought this, they were out because of supply chain issues because of COVID. So I don't want to waste it. I'm going to use it. I tried using this on the NYDIY C5C at track day, and this stuff was kind of melting off. It was kind of funny actually. So, but. Brake pads are on there, as you can see, in their specific areas. Normally I have a headlight, not a camera on my forehead. Now I'm going to put the caliper back on. Oh, actually no. Oh my God, we got to compress the caliper. I'm getting ahead of myself. Shame on me. I'm videoing this and all YouTubers practice, but why not just do this live? So, two ways of compressing a caliper. You can take the old pad, slide it here, and use a C-clamp to compress it. Early on in my years, I had made the mistake of compressing a caliper using a C-clamp, but actually putting the C-clamp in the actual piston hole. You got to be aware that some pistons are actually made out of a carbon ceramic, and they'll crack. Or if you put it in, or the metal ones, you got to make sure that it can actually go in cockeyed. So I found out using the pad with a C-clamp or a pad with a compression clamp, the whole wood. But you don't necessarily need the actual brake pad because look at that, see? And just compress it. See how it's going in? That's live. That's real time right there. Look at that. Pushes the caliper right in. Boom. Compressed. Voila. Now we're going to put the caliper on. So that's that. Line the caliper slide tabs with the actual rotor. They're like machined parts. There we go. Take our 12mm slide bolts, put them in there. Now you can torque these up if you want as well, or you can use a power tool. Just don't go crazy. Just a couple taps. That's it. And our brakes are done. So repeat this procedure on the other side, and that will be that. And then your front brake job will be done. So I'll let you know in the future if the customer has any issues with this brake rotor. If it warped up as fast as it did on the other ones, and we'll see. So anyway, any further questions, please reach out to me, nydiy22@gmail.com. Please like and subscribe. I'm trying to build the channel up. I'm one of the few upstate guys that actually has a YouTube channel in New York, and I'm just trying to build it up like them. I don't want to jump on their bandwagon or ride their coattails, so I'm trying to build it up myself. So I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving holiday and future holidays to come. So talk to you soon. Later. Bye.